video is all about the GCSE English and GCSE English Language exam, which we'll take in January of year 11. Now, some of you will be taking GCSE English with media studies, and some of you will be taking GCSE English Language with English literature. Whatever situation that is, whether you're doing media studies with English or English Language with English literature, the exam you take in January is the same. Okay? And it's also worth exactly the same amount of the overall grade. So the exam is worth 40% of your overall mark for that module, and 60% is the work you do on your coursework, which you should have already done in class with the classroom teacher. Okay, so this is what your exam is going to look like. It's a 2-hour exam, as you can see. It's divided into 2 sections. Section A is a reading section, and Section B is the writing section. The exam would advise that you spend an equal amount of time on each section. So that's 1 hour on the reading section and 1 hour on the writing section. So let's start by looking at the reading section. In the reading section, we'll be given a range, normally 2 or 3 pieces of non-fiction text. Remember, non-fiction means that it's real. It's not stuff that's made up, it's not stories, it's stuff that's really happened. And that could be a range of things. It could be an advert, could be literary non-fiction, it could be an extract from a biography or a piece of travel writing, it could be a newspaper, a website, any piece of non-fiction text. Okay, so that's the kind of thing you're going to be reading in the exam. What I look at now is the skills that actually you're being assessed in the exam, what you need to be able to do in the reading section of the paper to do well. The first thing you need to do is be able to read and understand text. I know that sounds very simple, and it's the basic building blocks of this paper. You know how to read and pull out the key information, the key ideas, the key arguments from a piece of writing. The second skill you need to be able to do is select appropriate quotations, material from that text to back up your ideas, support your arguments. So if you're writing about text, you know to bring out quotations from that text that prove and back up your ideas. The third skill you need to be able to do is to make comparisons and cross-references between texts. Remember, you'll have more than one text in your exam, 2, possibly 3 texts, and you'll need to be able to compare and contrast those texts. What's similar about them, what's different, how are they working in different ways. And lastly, you'll need to be able to explain and evaluate how writers use linguistic, grammatical, structural and presentational features to achieve effects and engage and influence the reader. And that's a bit of a mouthful. What that really means is, how do writers use words and language to make you feel what they want you to feel or think what they want you to think? And on top of that, what designers do with layout, pictures, colour, imagery, different fonts, headlines to back up those messages and make you feel certain things or think certain ways. That's what essentially that means. So those are the key skills you need to be able to prove that you can do in this section of the exam. Okay, so let's look at some of the text you might actually get given as the source material in the reading section of the exam. You might, for example, get a website. Now what I've taken here is an extract from a specimen paper from the exam board. So this isn't just something we've put together, this is something the exam board has used an example of the kind of things they're going to give you in January. So here's one, it's a website, it's a telegraph.co.uk, the online version of the Telegraph website. We've got an interview with Bruce Parry, the guy from Tribe. So you might, this isn't the whole text by the way, obviously it carries on, there's an awful lot more to it, the whole article is here, but I'm just showing you this as an example. So you might get asked about language, you also might get asked about some of the presentational features of a website. So use of imagery, use of links, different fonts, hyperlinks to show that a piece of information is linked to another piece on the website. So that's the kind of thing you might look at if they give you an online text. Okay, here's the second text. It's a newspaper article from the Times newspaper about new life revealed in the rainforests of the deep. Okay, so this is a newspaper article, so you may be asked things about use of headlines to grab the reader's attention, use of imagery, captions, subheadings if they have them, layout on the page, also the type of language they use. Often newspapers employ a very formal tone of voice, especially if it's a broadsheet newspaper. We might get a tabloid, you can compare how the different styles of newspaper use different formality of language in their writing. Okay, here's the third extract. This is an extract from Afghan Journey, which is a piece of literary non-fiction. So this is a book, or it's an extract from a book all about someone's travels in Afghanistan. Okay, and the kind of thing you might get asked about here are again use of language. So this is a different style of writing to a newspaper or even to a website. This is more about entertaining, about sort of trying to engage the reader on a much more sort of personal level. Now what you'll notice through the 3 pieces of source material they've given you is there's a theme running through them. Okay, in this case it's a theme of travel, of geography, of new lands and discovery. Now, the source material in the reading section will nearly always tie together around some theme, and that theme will then be developed in the writing section of the exam, section B. So, whilst you're doing the reading section, it will be giving you ideas to write about in the writing section. Okay, so those are the kind of things you're going to read in the reading section. Those are the kind of source material they're going to give you. Now, what I want to look at is some of the questions you might get asked. And again, these are the questions straight from the exam board about this source material. Question 1 refers to item 1, the first piece of source material, the website. And the question asks, what do you learn from Jan Moyer's newspaper article about where Bruce Parry has been and what he's been doing? Now, if you think back to the earlier slide about the kind of reading skills you're going to be asked to demonstrate, this is all about reading and understanding texts. This is testing your ability to read a piece of writing and pull out, extract the relevant ideas and the relevant information from that text. Now, you'll write your answers directly into an answer booklet. You won't get a separate paper from the exam script, so you actually write directly onto an answer booklet. And at the bottom, you'll see it gives you how many marks each question is worth. So obviously you need to be aware of that so you can plan to write more for the longer answers and less for the shorter answers. And your teacher will discuss with you more in detail in class how you go about doing that. Okay, so here's question 2 from the same exam paper. This refers to item 2 of the source material, the newspaper article, and it asks, how do the headline and the whole picture add to the effectiveness of the text? So again, thinking back to our earlier slide about the reading skills you're being tested on, this is all about explaining and evaluating use of presentational features, obviously headline will be in different fonts, and we'll talk about the picture, but also linguistic features, language features, because obviously in the headline there will be linguistic and language features which you'll be asked to comment on. Again, you'll be given a mark. This is another 8-mark question, so again, with the same length as question 1. Okay, so here's question 3. This one refers to item 3 from the source material, the extract from Afghan Journey, the non-fiction literary text. The question asks, what are some of the thoughts and feelings Mansur has during the journey? Now obviously this is a read and understand question, but also it's all about selecting quotations and extracting relevant material to support your answers. You'll be expected, for every thought and feeling that you pick out that Mansur has during that journey, you'll be expected to show a quotation backing up and supporting your ideas. And again, you'll notice another 8-mark question like the previous 2, so that'll give you a steer to how much you write. Okay, question 4, the last question in this section. Now this is the compare and contrast question. Remember, one of the key skills was your ability to cross-reference between texts. Now what you'll see is, they said you now need to refer to item 3, which is the Afghan Journey, the piece of non-fiction literary text. But you can compare it to either text 1 or text 2, so you get to decide which piece you're going to use as your comparative text. It says, compare the ways in which language is used for effect in the 2 texts. Give some examples and explain what the effects are. So again, the key, think back to our earlier slide, the key skills, we're looking at compare and contrast, but we're also looking at the use of linguistic features, linguistic devices, how writers use language to create impact. And again, with this, you'll be expected to pick out quotations to support your ideas. Now, you'll notice this is actually a 16-mark question. So you should be writing somewhere in the region of double the amount you've written for the previous 3 questions for this question. So that's something really important to bear in mind. That'll have an awful lot to do with your time planning in the exam. Make sure you leave yourself time to do the bigger mark questions. Okay, so that's the reading side of the paper done, that's section A. Section B is the writing section. Now remember, earlier I said that the writing questions will have a theme that will link to the theme from the reading section. So you'll be in many ways kind of begin to be prepared for the kind of stuff you're going to be asked about in the writing section. Now, the important things to remember here are you have to answer 2 questions. In the previous exams there was only 1, but now it's 2, and you no longer get a choice. Okay? In the previous exam there used to be a choice of 1 from 4, you now have 2 questions which you have to answer. But they're not equally marked. The first question is a shorter response, only 16 marks. You then have a longer response question which is worth 24 marks. So again, think about your time management and your planning. If you're writing more for the first question than for the second question, something's definitely gone wrong. So, let's look at the skills you'll be tested on in the writing section. These are things the examiner is looking for you to prove that you can do. So the first thing is to communicate clearly, effectively and imaginatively. That's essentially how well you write, how good your ideas are, and how good you are expressing yourself. Second one, this is very important, write in the appropriate form. You will be given a specific task and you need to write in a way that mirrors that task. So if you're told to write a letter, you must write a letter. If you're told to write a newspaper article, you must write a newspaper article. Every year, students throw away marks by writing an inappropriate form. They're told to write a letter, and instead they write a newspaper article, and automatically lose marks. Third skill is selecting vocabulary that is appropriate to the task and will engage the reader. Again, this doesn't just mean using interesting words, although that's obviously a part of it, but also using words which are appropriate to the task you've been given, to the form you've been given, and also the audience. You will often be given a specific audience to write for. So it might be a letter to your local MP, or it might be a newspaper in your school magazine, or it might be a letter to a friend. So you need to think about how your language will change depending on who you're writing for. The language you use to write to an MP will be different than if you're writing to a mate. Fourthly, you'll be looking at your ability to organise writing into paragraphs, and indeed, or sentences and paragraphs. This is the nuts and bolts of writing. Is your writing organised? Is it structured? Is it hanging together well? You'll also be asked to use a range of sentence structures. This means all your sentences are the same length and contain the same amount of information. One way to think about it is maybe use long sentences for description and then occasional short sentences to give your writing impact. There's a key idea you want to bring the examiner's attention to. Lastly, accurate use of punctuation and spelling. You are marked on the accuracy of your writing. So that's something that's worth practicing in class and whenever you do homeworks and whenever you write in general. Right, so this is an example of the kind of question you might get first up in the writing section. This is the short answer response, the 16-mark question. It says, write a letter to a friend explaining why you would like him or her to join you in a visit to a place that you think is very special. So think back to the previous slide and the skills you're being assessed on. They're already giving you the form. You've got to write a letter. So there's no point writing a newspaper article or a website or anything else. You must write a letter. But that letter's going to a friend, so that's going to give you some ideas about the kind of language choices you're going to make, the formality of the language you use. And also it's giving you a clear subject matter. You need to talk about this place that is very special, or to go to a place that's very special. And already you can start to see how it's building on the theme of the reading section, that idea of travel and new exciting places. Now, some important points here. First of all, this is a 16-mark question. This is the short answer response. So you don't want to spend as much time in this question as you are on the second question. So you need to have a good idea of your time management at this stage. Also, it's really important, you don't have to tell the truth in the writing section. Lots of students lose marks, they think, I can't think of somewhere very special, or I've never been somewhere that's particularly remarkable. Or what more likely they do is they do something really boring and standard, like, oh, going to the beach. And they talk about the perfect sand and the blue sky and the blue sea, and it's all very lovely, but hundreds of kids will write that piece, and the examiner will hear it over and over again. It'll be very, very boring. So be prepared to be imaginative. That's one of the key skills you're looking for, is communicating with imagination. So don't be afraid to make something up or be a bit original. And here's our longer question, the 24-mark question. It says, some people think it's wrong that primitive peoples and their communities are disrupted by tourists and TV crews and they should be left in peace. Write an article for a travel magazine which argues for or against this idea. And again, you can see you're given a new form, you're given a new target audience, and that will change the way you write. So your answer to question 5 will be very different to your answer to question 6, because they're testing your ability to change and adapt the way you write. This now is testing your ability to argue, to be persuasive. That will again test your ability to structure an argument very well. So a lot of the marks we gain there for structure and organisation. Think about how you use paragraphs, for example. And remember, 24 marks. You want to leave more time for this question than for the previous question. Right, so that's the exam. So what can you do between now and January to make sure you do as well as possible in that exam? Well, the first thing you can do is read a lot of non-fiction text. The more you read, the better, and more widely you read as well. So don't just read one type of non-fiction text. Everything you see out there, adverts, direct mail stuff that comes to your letterbox, websites you go to, any non-fiction books you might come across in school, not just in English, in history and other subjects, all of those things will give you an idea of how language and layout and presentational features work. And when you read those non-fiction texts, read them in an analytical way. One thing you'll learn about in class, or probably have done already, is what we call a PAL analysis. So when you read a piece of non-fiction, think to yourself, what is the purpose of that piece of writing? What is it there to do? What is it trying to achieve? Is it trying to entertain? Is it trying to inform? Is it trying to persuade? Is it trying to make you do something, or make you feel something, or make you think something? Who is the audience? Remember, that audience may not be you. So don't just think, oh, it's boring, or it's therefore must be badly written. It might just be that the audience that the writer has in mind isn't you. It's not trying to appeal to you. The language. What language style do they use? Is it formal? Is it informal? Do they use a chatty kind of tone? Is it trying to be aggressive or assertive? How are they trying to use language to get their message across? And lastly, layout. How is it designed? What colours are used? What fonts are used? What size are those fonts? Are some pieces of writing bigger than others? Do they use certain pictures and images? And what do they use those for? You can also practice writing in a range of different styles. Think about how you change your writing style depending on the task or the topic you're writing about. That's one of the key skills you're being assessed on that writing section, your ability to adapt your writing to different situations. And lastly, you can go on Take Away Teacher, which you already are by the fact you're watching this video, and look at some of the other videos which give you advice on some of the more specific elements of the exam. Very best of luck.